Everything has been so self-evident for thousands of years. Then suddenly came this modernistic idea and the world turned ugly. And all the people that were in charge, they pretend that it doesn't matter. But of course it matters. That's why we built beautiful and strive for beauty. Now suddenly we don't. Of course every society will have ills, but that we have increased the effect of the ills rather than reduced them. If our time is reflected in what we build, then our time is really horrific. The mental minds that create our architecture, yes, it reflects their minds very, very much. Very shallow, very banal, and more or less stupid, I would say. Our elites, they are the ones without values. They are the ones that are postmodern. They are the ones that don't care, but ordinary people haven't changed that much. Swedish elites are more loyal to Belgian elites or American elites than they are to the Swedish public. So everyone has stopped caring about the general population. They only care about each other and their nihilistic postmodern worldview. And that in return they try to impose on the rest of us. And they have succeeded in imposing very much on the rest of us. And damaged, the social fabric, the cultural fabric, all fabrics of society. And we are seeing very much the result of that, the atomization of society. 14 years, I would say at least, I've been advocating for another way of building, what we call new traditional architecture, reintroducing the framework, the loose framework and the philosophy, how we built before the advent of modernism. Create a more beautiful and meaningful society. Both architecture, art, poetry, music, everything have turned into banality and relativism. We build a lot of housing today, but we build very few homes. There's a big difference between being stored in a building and somewhere where you feel home. The uprising movement, it exists all over Europe now, the US, China, everywhere. So this feeling that contemporary architecture is more or less crap, it's shared with all humans all over the globe. Classical architecture is better in every aspect compared to modernist architecture. And they know this, of course. So therefore, they never want to discuss architecture. They will at once say fascist, Nazi, totalitarian, far right, etc., etc. That's a strategy they have. If they can't name you that, then they have nothing. We are social creatures and we are very scared people, especially, aspiring middle class or aspiring upper middle class. They are very sensitive. And if they are told that this is beautiful and this is what you should like, they change their taste accordingly. Maybe they don't like it in their heart, but they would buy this and like this because they want it to be reflected in their persona. People vote with their feet rather than what they say that they like. It's extremely obvious also when you look at where architecture lived, and they were enormously overrepresented in living in classical buildings.
It comes down to what people do and not what they say. It's the same with immigration and segregation. You don't see any high-top politicians living in Rinkeby, for example.
If you have a traditional mindset, you don't see things as better or worse. You see it as part of a chain. There were people before me and there will be people after me. The people that lived before me were no better or worse than we are today. The classical hierarchy is basically that the only buildings that are taller are religious buildings and public buildings. That shows what's important in society. The spiritual and the public. What you know how is that they try to build towers everywhere. Towers are both bad urbanism, but they also dilute this sense of what is important in society. Is mammon the most important thing in society? Hopefully not. But out of a philosophical level, you strive for what is good and beautiful. What is beautiful is a very biological term. We can instantly feel that something is beautiful or ugly. The same fractal patterns that we find in nature, we find in classical architecture. And that is a reason why we find it beautiful. Architecture has the power both to increase the ills or reduce the ills. The ones opposing traditional architecture are always leftist and progressive people. So then, if you discuss with them, you need victim points. You need to have disabilities, you need to have victim points, because otherwise you are oppressing fascists by default. Second is to believe that as soon as we get rid of religion, we become very rational people. Religion is what saved us from irrationality and chaos. We changed a good God to worse gods. So we now believe in climate change religion. That's the biggest religion that we have at the moment. It's actually expressed in a religious way with religious language. it's a doomsday cult. You compensate for your climate, you have to feel angst for the climate, you try to compensate for your sins, and the end of the world is near, and we have to take action now. It's so religious.
Is goddess worship, worshipping the earth.
And people also generally believe that the earth is better without humans, so we should die.
Exactly what you can see in the Old Testament is human sacrifice, but with a little sugar on it, and you named it abortion. It's so infantile mindset of the secular world.
We don't reproduce anymore. Demographic-wise, we're on the edge of a cliff now, but it's an accelerating trend that we hid with immigration in Western Europe. It's just short-sighted here and now, my own pleasure. It's much more meaningful to do something for your child than do it for yourself. Caring for others creates a very different society from one society that where you only put your own interests above everything else. So society will be less nice with this secularism.
When it comes to brass tacks, it's for evil's sake.
That's for evil's sake. It is for the ideological sake. I would tell that they are even now. I would go so far. God can live without us, but we can't live without him. Society will falter without a belief in the transcendent.
Host Mattias Lidborn, and this is the Metanoia Path Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Metanoia Path Podcast with me, your host, Mattias Lidborn. For this episode 9, we will be joined by a fellow Swede, Michael Diamant. He is the founder of New Traditional Architecture and also a co-founder of the Architecture Uprising movement, in which exists all over the world. Have you ever asked yourself why you feel somewhat alienated when you're in a modern urban environment? And then when you go downtown to the older parts of the city, you feel somewhat better, even much better. And if you don't question yourself why that is, then you won't see the little trick in the city, the trick of the modernists. And this is somewhat what we discuss in this episode. And architecture, it bleeds into so many things in our lives, because we spend so much time surrounded by architecture. This also bleeds into ideology, politics, social structures, and so forth. So with no further ado, here's the episode. Enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Metanoia Path Podcast with me, your host, Mattias Lidborn. Today, I'm joined by Michael Diamant, who is a fellow Swede. He is the founder of New Traditional Architecture and co-founder of the Architecture Uprising here in Sweden and also across Europe. And we are going to talk about architecture, but not just in the so-called narrow sense of like buildings and designs, but I think we will go much deeper than that. Architecture is about not just about the concrete buildings and the design and so forth, but also about beauty, order, and how our surrounding shapes us. So it really affects us how we feel and how we relate to each other, and even how we experience meaning in our lives. So you could also say that architecture reflects the state of our time, the zeitgeist, so to say.
Yes, very much so, and that's unfortunately something very something very bad reflected on our time. If our time is reflected in what we build, then our time is really horrific, and I think it's a little better than that. But yes, the mental minds that create our architecture, yes, it reflects their minds very, very much. Very shallow, very banal, and more or less stupid, I would say. I have no other words for it at this moment.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's, our culture and the way we live today is also a reflection of, you can say that the buildings reflect how our minds are today. It's like, when we look at buildings around us, we see like a mirror of values. And it's also
I would say
saying
that
something
we
about.
have more values. The general public have more values. We have even more values, but the difference is that our elites, and they have stepped back in so many other fields as well. They are the ones without values. They are the ones that are postmodern. They are the ones that don't care and are totally nihilist or relativist. But ordinary people haven't changed that much. Of course, we are affected by what our elites do. So we certainly are. But there is more to our time than the tragedy of modernist architecture or modernist art. There is much more of our time. But our elites are totally, yeah, they should be thrown on the heap dustbin of history or something, uh, because they are not loyal to us. The difference between, there always been elitism in every society in every time. The difference is that uh, the loyalty of the elites, everything was vertical. Now it's horizontal. Swedish elites are more loyal to Belgian elites or American elites than they are to the Swedish public. So everyone has stopped caring about the general population. They only care about each other and their nihilistic postmodern worldview. And that in return, they try to impose on the rest of us. And they have succeeded in imposing very much on
Yeah.
the rest of us. And damaged, the social fabric, the cultural fabric, all fabrics of society. And we're seeing very much the result of that, the atomization of society.
Yeah. Yes. Again, completely agreed, and I agree. And it's it's spreading like a vile fire through, not just in a physical sense, in the things we can see, touch, smell, and so forth, uh,
Mm,
in the literal sense, but also in the mind of people. But people get, uh, what I tried to say before was like, the buildings we look at today, they also tell us something about what people long for, because you can see in the mental health state
mm,
of people that they really feel extremely alienated by the environment they are in. And it
mm,
is really like, on an intuitive level, it's like, for me, you can see that uh, people are put in a place where they're just like a cog in the money making machine, and is very very much so that it's almost constructed that way because they want to steer people in that way, in that mindset that we are here to build some greater corner of this economic growing machine, so we
mm.
can, yeah. And
I wouldn't
um,
say, I would, in the beginning, I would agree with you that there must be some kind of conspiracy against the public, but now I only believe in their own, in the modernist stupidity. They just happen to have the power. They are very stupid people, but what they are very, very successful with is maintaining this power despite everyone hating what they do. But yes, the alienation, atomization is very real, because most people, if we take Stockholm, where I live, they are very, very many people are stored in a place, but they really don't want to be there. It's like they want to be either in downtown or in a row house or villa. So everything is like always gravitating to our city center, because we don't expand this city center, neither with the real city districts or with new classical architecture. So when the population of Stockholm expands, quite rapidly, I would say we have passed, in the entire Stockholm area, we're more than 2 million now. What is, the city center has remained unchanged for more than 100 years. So there is greater and greater concentration to this little area that is not allowed to grow. And also there is a this city center is also one of the few places, except for some old suburbs, that has meaningful architecture where you want to be, where you want to feel that this is my place, I am at home here. Most other places in Stockholm, maybe including where I live now in Östberga, south of Stockholm, its only value is its proximity to the real city, to the real architecture. And that's the situation we are in, I would say, most places in the world, and most places in Europe, and most places in the US. Everything is just how much can you afford to live to the real thing that you really want to live in. Most people are, we don't have that much choices, or more or less forced to live in modernism that we don't want, but we have no other option.
Yeah.
We are
That's
totally
also
priced. We are totally priced out of the classical.
yeah, and that's something that that you can see in the youth today. Actually, all these trends of
Mm.
signing out of the normal way of things, in like having a job and aiming for the next best position at the work and so forth, but signing out and trying out to live in camper vans and so forth. And
Mm.
if you have seen that phenomena, and also what the um, uh, after 2020, after the so-called pandemic, it was apparent to people also that and question themselves, am I doing? Why am I living like this? Because it's also that the modern society that we live in is very much numbing the mind of people, not just in the ideology sense, but in the everything that is promoted, all the distractions. Hello there. Just a quick interruption from the conversation here. I will just inform you that if you would like any coaching session with me, you can easily do that by just send me a mail and you will receive a free consultation. And if you put the episode name in the mail, you will get additional free hour of coaching. Also for personal training and diet plans. Just hit me on the mail or send me a PM on Instagram or YouTube. Thank you very much. And now back to the conversation. So, Michael, if you can tell a little bit about yourself and your projects and what you're doing.
Well, I am becoming very middle-aged by now. I'm 44 years old, and for the past 14 years, I would say at least, I've been advocating for another way of building, for what we call new traditional architecture. It's not about styles, as many may think, but reintroducing the framework, the loose framework and the philosophy, how we built before the advent of modernism. You could say all architecture before the 1930s. That you could quite easily, even in the 1930s, there were a lot of classical architecture built. But it's not about style, as said, it's about the framework. To reintroduce that framework, how do you design a building? What things are important when you design a building? So reintroduce this framework, and from there, create a more beautiful and meaningful society again. Because architecture has always both strived to be beautiful, and it has also been very expressful of meaning, reflecting the culture. It's like it both reflects the culture and it reinforces the culture, in the sense, who are we, or rather who we want to be. So architecture can also elevate. So that was, self-evident for most of human history. Then came these radical, I don't want to call them this nihilist and stupid ideas. They entered architecture schools, and it was a very successful movement in that sense that it hijacked them. And from there on, everything has just turned both architecture, art, poetry, music, everything have turned into banality and relativism. So that is what I'm the main enemy that I'm fighting, to reintroduce a previous mindset, and then when that is reintroduced, let history go on and we create new beautiful classical styles, not the same as the past styles, but equally beautiful and equally meaningful, reflecting the people that live there and giving them a sense of home. We build a lot of housing today, but we build very few homes. There's a big difference between being stored in a building, you're protected from the elements, and somewhere where you feel home, where you have an emotional attachment. So that I'm fighting for and advocating for, and I would say quite successfully by now. The uprising movement, it exists all over Europe now, in the US, South Latin America, India, China, Israel, Turkey, Syria, everywhere. So this feeling that contemporary architecture is more or less crap, it's shared with humans all over the globe. A majority of people feel the same. They are very alienated from the new built environment, but most of them still don't know that there is an option. And what we do in the uprising movement, we show them there is an option. And as soon as people discover that, they get very happy and want more of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is not my main occupation. While this is a huge part of my life, I would say, during daytime, I work as a civil servant for the Swedish government. Very secure and stable, and yeah, it's not a boring job, but more quiet, you could say, than my advocacy that I do in my spare time.
Yeah, but isn't that very great? I always found that contrast in life is the way to go. It's for me at least. I love contrasts, and that's very great to have. Uh, but yeah, you're right on there. And as I said, I found you through Jonathan Pageau's podcast, The
Mhm.
Symbolic World. And there were also this guy with you, Andrew Gold, I think,
Yes, yes.
architecture. Yeah.
An amazing craftsman. He's like a modern Leonardo da Vinci, in the sense that he's a multi-talent. There's nothing that he can't do. He's craftsman, musician, everything, architect, you name it. So he's a real multi-talent, uh, and I'm very happy, that he turned to traditional architecture. Uh, because okay, I travel a lot, when we speak, but there is so much talent in the world. There's never been more talent in the world as of today, and more people that are being able to express their talent. But there's also never been a time in history where most talent is channeled the wrong way, unfortunately, because of the education system. So if it weren't for the education system, we could have a million Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci is now. We could have a million, amazing classical painters, a million classical composers, a million classical poets. There would be so much talent, so much beauty, and so much novel, beautiful ideas in our society. But unfortunately, everyone is schooled through this relativist postmodern schooling system. So all the talent is more or less wasted,
Yeah.
which is very sad.
It's very sad. And just a quick story there. I I've been for not so long ago, but I worked as a guard in a library, a bigger city center library.
Mm,
And of course, I would be surprised if they were prompting up beautiful art, for instance.
mm,
But then I would be surprised. But because knowing how the society ideology is
mm,
pushed on people, but there was always this. It's the same for me when I'm in a city. I feel like physical nausea. I feel
Mm.
I'm very intuitive and very sensitive to this. I'm a hiker, you
Mm.
know, I can be outside in nature for weeks and months, and nature is this place where there is order, the chaos in
Mm.
perfection, you know. So it's
Mm.
really soothing the souls. It's a big difference. But anyway, so in the library, um, I can just take one example. There was this so-called art they did. They were just taking paper and writing and drawing something that they like to draw. Anything goes, you know. And then they just
Exactly, anything goes.
the,
You're so
yeah,
right at that point.
yeah, and then they just take this paper and crushes it like this and glue many papers together, put a string, put it in the ceiling, and then they call that art.
Hmm.
And that's like, yeah, this is art. No, for me that's relativistic garbage.
Nonsense. Yes,
Yeah, it's
because it
nonsense,
requires no talent.
childish and
Yeah,
childish.
it's childish, but also because it requires no talent. You know, I couldn't paint a Rembrandt painting. I'm not that skilled because painting like Rembrandt or another painter through history, it required talent. With modernist art, it requires no talent. And then that's why it's so meaningless. It requires no effort, no talent. The only effort that you need to have, or the only skill you need to have, is to be a very good wordsmith, because you need to express a lot of word salad to try to invent meaning in all this banal meaninglessness that you have created. So they are very, very good wordsmiths, and you see that also in modernist architecture. How they describe their concrete boxes. I have never, it's really a stroke of creativity to be able to write half a page to describe what is more or less a concrete box. So
Yeah.
that's where their talent is, but it's not about creating, because it's creation that doesn't require talent. Why should we be impressed by something that everyone can create, where there is no refinement, there's no beauty, and there was no purpose other than the banality?
Exactly, and it's isn't that just what you can see today in what is prompt by governments and so forth, the ideology that you can of inclusion, and that everyone can be anything,
Mm,
and you can see this in every level of
mm,
society. But I want to go into one thing that I actually read I don't know when it was read, but I saw an article um, of a guy called Cool Björn, Björn, Cool Björn or something like that,
mm.
in a newspaper, and he was talking about you and
I think which article. Yeah, he has a bit of a special name, but he's
yeah,
for a socialist newspaper called Arbetet,
mm,
uh, work, you could say.
yeah,
But
exactly, and the
because
title
of
of
the Swedish system of funding newspapers, maybe that newspaper have 2,000 readers, but it gets a bigger weight than it has because it gets
yeah,
government money.
oh, exactly, and
Mm,
I I I can just I think I remember the line of the article was something like what architecture uprising wants is fascism, and something
yes.
like that. So he basically claims that the architect uprising and yeah, he almost personally attacked you in a way. So
Which was a
yeah,
very interesting take from a socialist, I would say, a very, very interesting take, because my what he reacted to is that I want government, or in this case, municipal intervention in how we build our environment. I don't believe that modernist architects will suddenly create classical proportions. I also believe that a majority of the civil servants at every municipality in Sweden are modernist, and they will try to block, and I've seen it, so many times, they will try to block classical projects. So if something is broken, for a while you will need intervention in the market, you could say. And he likened that with fascism. So if you want to regulate or try to correct market mistake due to this ideological hegemony that modernism has, then that is fascism. At the same time, he's a socialist. So I think he's quite, government intervention. It's not something that he's strange to. So, so it was so paradoxical to accuse someone that wants, a certain amount of government intervention for being a fascist. That would make himself a very big fascist, I would say. But of course, he wouldn't reflect on that. And the use of the word fascist, that's what modernists always do because they don't want to discuss the merits of architecture. If we would discuss the merits of architecture, the merits of classical architecture, or the merits of modernist architecture, we would see that classical architecture is better in every aspect compared to modernist architecture. So therefore, and they know this, of course, so therefore they never want to discuss architecture. They will at once say fascist, Nazi, totalitarian, right, far right, etc., etc. That's a strategy they have. So
Yeah.
if they can't name you that, then they have nothing. So that's everything. Every article was about that this is fascist, not about the merits of different types of architecture, but that this is fascist, because a certain amount of people, quite a big amount of the public, I would say, would be scared to engage with something that has been branded fascist. They are not enough curious to find out for themselves if it's fascist or not. But they will, trust the general public media and they will believe that this is something bad. And even if they like classical architecture, they don't want to be associated with something that has been labeled fascist. So that's
Exactly, and that's very easy to just turn to conformism,
thinking, yes.
and yeah, because if you just think for yourself a little bit and have some historical knowledge, you would
Mm.
see that the word fascism isn't correctly put if you taken it in the
No.
historical meaning as well, and also. So it's very paradoxical. This was what you were into as well here, but it's for me it was the paradoxical thing with it was that he was ending up doing exactly what he accused you of doing. He claimed that you want to impose one aesthetic vision on everyone,
Mm.
but then he uses the most loaded political label there is,
Mm.
and just to try to suppress your ideas and exclude them from a legitimate debate. So in
Oh,
reality, what he calls fascism isn't fascism at all. It just because it's uh, what you're doing is what he's doing is he's in a way criticizing the traditional um, um, uh, form of buildings and so forth and aesthetics and what you are doing the opposite, but it is become so ludicrous,
everything's absurd, but you know it has a function and a point. uh, Luckily there is social media now, so you're able to respond through social media. So the debate didn't die there. I'm also a chronicler now at a news site, so I can attack back. So they can't silence. As long as they can't silence, they have lost, because the public wants classical architecture. So they are more or less against the public. But why don't we see more classical architecture? Well, because the politicians have been conditioned in this way. If they intervene in architecture or art, they are fascist or Nazi, and every newspaper will call them that. So they are still a bit afraid. But as soon as politicians lose this fright, then they will see a lot of more intervention, and we will see a lot more beautiful new classical architecture that the public actually likes. Can you imagine how low our expectations are when we hear that something new is going to be built? What are our expectations? That it will be ugly. We just hope that it will be super ugly, but we have no expectations that it will be good or beautiful, and that's kind of sick in a way. That
Yeah.
with everything now, with art, architecture, we have so extremely low expectations. So, as said, the only expectation, the only hope we have is that it should not be totally ugly, just a little ugly, a little disturbing. Um, yeah, but then we never expect anything to be good or beautiful anymore.
No. And the sense I get oftentimes is that what I was saying earlier, that they're doing it consciously, making it ugly, almost that so people really feel alienated.
Yes.
And also, do you get this sense also that um, what you are promoting, the traditionalist architecture, is this also something that is like dangerous for them, because it tells it tells people that it's not just economic growth that is the most meaningful thing in life, but it's beauty, it's coming together with people and have a community that is loving and recognizes each other in happiness and take care of each other. So it turns the public sense away from the money making, um, you know, yeah, liking to be a part of this money making.
Well, it never was that much about money making. It's our it's a culture war. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe imported from the US, I don't know. Uh, but it's the same situation here as in the US. It's a culture war, not an economic war, uh, because it's not about the cost why we build ugly. It's an ideology why we build ugly. So they are very afraid of every new classical project, and that's why they are stopping them. They are actively working to stop them, because every new classical project will show what the public prefer. Because every new classical project creates a cheering public that loves it and a demand for more. So you can end up in a situation where all the builders and all the public and all the politicians only demand classical architecture. Then everything that they believe in will fall apart. So for them, it's important that the public, the politicians, and the builders have no other option than their modernism, because they know that if there is an option, everyone will choose that option instead of what they create. So therefore, they have to kill it before it grows. But it's getting harder and harder, because even in Sweden, things move very slowly here. Uh, it starts now. Many politicians have started to realize and we see more and more projects initiated. Only problem is that, of course, from approved to built takes years. But we will see in the end of this decade, we will see a lot of new finished classical projects. And from there, it will just be a flood, because when the people see we can build this, they will want more. They don't want, the sterile, ugly boxes that the modernists create.
So during this time you have been active in this promoting this traditional architecture. How many projects, and if you have any specific example of a project? And my curiosity is the response from the people when they have lived in this environment for, let's say, a year or something like that. Is there any example of this?
I would say that there is only one example at the moment. It is not the greatest example, but because we are so starved, it's still very beloved, and that's Nacka Grace project. It was completed in a municipality very close to Stockholm. It's a quarter block of 1920s pastiche architecture, but it's reasonable, it's good. It was the most in our, we have a site called Hemnet in Sweden where you search if you want to buy a new apartment. It's there where you search, and it was the most clicked object on Hemnet. People were so interested in it, and everything has been rented out. It's strange thing. It's a rental apartments, but everything was rented out despite higher rent than a general new build project. So it was extremely popular, and people were extremely happy about it, and it has got so much praise. And we see this all the time when you see that a classical project has been approved, that people get so excited about it. But as said, modernist, municipal workers, building people that sit at the municipalities and approving projects, and making detailed plans, they are very much against this. So politicians need to know both that they have to push for classical architecture, and then they have to bulldoze through all the municipal administrators that try to block these projects. So we have had more projects approved that haven't even started being constructed yet because they have got stuck in the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But this at least has been approved, very much appreciated, very much beloved, and people want more of it. And the developer also has no problem building more of it. But the developer also knows that most municipalities in Stockholm and in Sweden will not allow it because they are run by modernists. So they will block any suggestion to build like this. Developers are totally innocent. They don't care what they build. They can build towers with turrets and classical, or they can build a modernist box. For them, it's profit maximizing. And it is profit maximizing in very many cases to build classical. So they would, of course, want to build classical then, but they are not allowed to in most places.
Yeah. Okay. So there is that part, but I would say I am very glad to hear that even though there is not that many projects that have
Well,
been
not in
completed,
Sweden.
but
If you
not in
go to
Sweden.
our neighboring countries, there's tons of them. In Germany,
Okay.
there are more new classical projects in Berlin alone than entire of Scandinavia.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
the situation we are living in.
But it's a very good result from the statistics from Hemnet, and it's very telling.
Mm.
So and people in Sweden is very conformist, and um, they do all the same thing that everyone else does. So it's quite a strong
Indicator what the
yes.
general, yes, what people would like, because that's also a thing that uprising has done. It has freed people. Because we are a very conformist society, and it's a consensus based as well. Most people believe that, oh, it's only me that like classical architecture, but maybe someone else likes modernist architecture. They believe that there was some kind of even distribution of people that love classical and people that love modernism. But we have showed them with both statistics and what they've noticed when we publish project is that it's not an even division of taste. Is an overwhelming majority prefer traditional architecture to modernism. And when they realize that they are part of an overwhelming majority, then they also dare to speak out much more. And that's a very, very good and healthy indicator that people now, I see it is very funny. Every time I get a lot of commercial for new building projects in my social media, and every time I look at the comment section, people now, this is ugly. And I just love, that people dare now to say and speak out.
Yeah.
This is ugly. This is ugly. This is ugly. Yes, you build this because you have the power, but that doesn't mean that we need to like it.
No. And on a individual level as well, I live in a little fisher village down in Skåne, and here is a lot of beautiful old like cabin like village
Mm,
houses with it looks not even, and and the
mm,
it's like this the roof is halm. I don't know how to say it in English.
mm.
Halm roof and so forth. And then you have some houses that is modern, and you know, they are so ugly. But even though they are very ugly, many people say, "Oh no, that's very nice and that's very, 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 very beautiful and so forth." I would like to live in a house like that.
Mhm.
But that's also it's a part of this like it's like a it's a
We are
people
social
get
creatures.
indoctrinated to like it, and yeah, social, yeah, exactly, we're
Yeah,
social
I don't
creatures, so
think
we
that they
need to
like,
get.
it's very easy to see what people like more with what they vote with their feet. But in general, we are social creatures, and we are very, as a very scared people. So we are especially, aspiring middle class or aspiring upper middle class, they are very sensitive. And if they are told that this is beautiful and this is what you should like, they change their taste accordingly. Maybe they don't like it in their heart, but they want, they would buy this and like this because they want it to be reflected in their persona.
Yeah,
Because if there is a consensus that if you buy this box, you are a refined person, then if I live in this box, people will see me as a refined person. So you want a lot of things be reflected on your persona that has been, attributed to these modern boxes. So, as always, it's easier to see what when people vote with their feet rather than what they say that they like. It's extremely obvious also when you look at where architecture live, because architects, and this was done a survey by the Union of Swedish Architects where they live, and they were enormously overrepresented in living in classical buildings. So 13% of all architects called classical, but 28% of all architects lived in this housing stock. And the housing stock that was most popular after that was built in the 30s and the 40s. So basically, they are very, very overrepresented in early modern, which is very, very heavily influenced by classical, our 30s and 40s architecture, and in the real classical architecture. So despite what they are saying, they are voting with their feet, so you can see where their real preferences lie.
yeah,
But all these boxes, they are built for a middle class and upper middle class that care more what is supposed to be reflected on them than the actual building that they live in.
yeah. It's comes down to what people do and not what they say. It's the same
Yes.
with immigration and segregation. You don't see any high top politicians living in Rinkeby, for example.
No.
It's the same in many ways, and I think it's quite clever, to not clever, but it's very interesting, because as you said, that the house is uh, like representing status, and that you're a efficient person and so forth, living in a certain modernistic building and or house, and that makes people that is sane and is actually liking the traditional art and beauty and so forth. It's pushing them as well to aim at getting that modernistic building someday. It's the implications of it, that it not
If
mind
it was
virus, but
neutral,
if you,
yeah,
yeah,
if architecture was totally neutral, that you would not gain any social points by living in these white boxes, then that market would totally crash. But as said, for a certain demographic, when you sell these areas, you sell them as you are the most progressive, most avant-garde, most new thinking person if you live here. So that a lot of people buy that because they want to be seen as this. So they expect people to see them as this as soon as they move in these ugly
yeah,
boxes. So it's very smart marketing. Everything is
yeah,
branded really as new, refined, sophisticated, and of course progressive. You are progressive, the holy grail, for upper middle class and middle class today.
Yeah.
No one
And
wants to be a reactionary and intolerant. So
no, exactly.
reason.
That's that. Then you're a fascist, yeah.
Yes.
So, so, um, so Michael, I would like to hear. I would like to hear you really steelman the opposite arguments that you have heard from the opposite side, the modernist side. What are their strongest argument and how they argue for their vision of how architecture should be dealt with?
They have no strong arguments. It's they are parroting. It doesn't matter if you speak with a modernist in Argentina or speak one in Sweden. They are like parrots. Everyone has been instructed the same way, how to deal with criticism. First, they will lie. They will try to demoralize you by saying it's too expensive to build classical architecture. Okay. Then you show them a new build that was built, and no developer builds something out of being altruistic. They build it to make a profit. So then it was possible. Okay, if that demoralization doesn't work, they will try with there are no skilled craftsmen. Then you show a beautiful new home, classical home that was built with very much crafts. Okay, there were craftsmen. It doesn't fit with modern regulations. And at the same time, if you show, then you just show me a new classical project, and because it was built, it filled, it all the it was approved by a municipal council. So then it fulfills, all modern regulations. So the first aim that they do is demoralization. You cannot build classical today, therefore you have no option than to build modernist. When you have overcome that's what you do very easily just by showing new classical projects. They will try to say you shouldn't do that because it's not our time. But that's also because they have a very misguided view of time. They have a different view of time than ordinary people or the traditional architects have. Their view of time is that it's like a linear progress. So we are here, and if everything is linear progress, then of course what is back is worse than what is today. If you have a traditional mindset, you don't see things as better or worse. You see it as part of a chain. There were people before me and there will be people after me. The people that lived before me were no better or worse than we are today, and the people in the future will not as well not be better or worse than today, which means that we can learn from every time. If they created amazing things, then we should learn from them, period. So in their mindset, you cannot learn from people that lived before us because we are more advanced in their view than people that did before us. So that's also very easy to just put down because they are very incoherent. When it comes to city planning, the most modern was the car-centric city. That was the city planning of the 60s in all over the Western world. Sweden, US, Britain, etc. Everyone agreed that it was a mistake, and we are trying to reverse now to more traditional city planning. They won't call it traditional city planning, but that's what they're doing. The same thing with food. We ate whole foods, sorry, we ate some kind of whole foods, whole cooking, home cooking. Then in the 60s, it was processed food. And today we realized, oh, that wasn't very healthy. So we're trying to return to more whole foods and cooking rather than processed and microwaving. So with that said, we realized that, car-centric planning was bad. Eating processed food was bad. In both those cases, we take a step back. Why can't we accept that, modernist architecture was also a mistake and take a step back? So that's how I counter that argument, because we take a step back in so many other fields where we rushed, where we threw out the baby with the bathwater, that we were so eager to become modern that we threw away all that is good. And that's also not the natural way of how people do things. People do things very conservatively in their private lives. You keep, if you like the jacket that you have, you will try to keep it as long as possible. You will go to a tailor to fix if it has broken, there are holes in it, you will go try to fix it and keep it as long as possible until you find, and you will only buy a new jacket if it's equally good or better. You will not just throw away your old jacket and just buy a random jacket because it's novel, because it's new. So we are conservative in our mindsets, and that should apply for everything. Is modernist architecture better than traditional architecture? Well, if we look at the metrics, it's not. Therefore, we should not do it. It's not against progress, but progress means that something has become better. And if new contemporary modernist architecture is worse than traditional architecture, then we should stick with traditional architecture until we have created something that's either equally good or better.
Yeah.
So those are the most prominent. And then, of course, climate change and all this nonsense. But those are just basically metrics. And traditional architecture is better than modernist architecture in all these terms of social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and of course, which one is best for, reducing our imprint, our effect on climate change. Uh, Classical architecture has that mostly, I would say, not because of materials, but because longevity of the buildings. A building's longevity is based on not on the materials that it was built from, but that people love it so that it's beautiful and culturally expressive. Buildings that are beautiful and culturally expressive, we will always find a new purpose for, and therefore they will have a long lifespan, thus be more better for the climate. If we build ugly modernist buildings, they can be built in the most eco-friendly materials, but it doesn't matter because in 30 years' time, when a developer comes and say, "I want to tear this down and build something new," no one will protest. It will be torn down and something new will be built. But if you build a beautiful building that is culture expressive, where the developer comes and says, "I want to tear this down," there will be protests. So it doesn't mean that every classical building will be saved, but in general that we get a longer lifespan because people will actually care about these buildings, unlike
Yeah.
all the 80s and 90s office buildings that we now tear down today.
Yeah.
No one cares
I
about
think that, sorry, but I think that's a very interesting argument and clings very true. And I didn't think about that aspect of it. It's not that concrete argument, maybe, but when you hear it, it's okay, yeah, of course.
it's very
You have
intuitive.
to take, yeah, you have to have people in mind when you're calculating the length of the yeah, how long the building will stand, and
Yes.
in that way, yeah, it's yeah, I think that is a very good argument, and
You can
you
probably see it in the place where you live. We have old water towers now all over Sweden and Europe. And despite they were a fun utility building, water towers, they are so beautiful and culture expressive that most of them have been converted now either to offices or even housing. Would you do that with a 1960s water tower? No, it would be torn down.
Mm.
So that's the difference, between building something that is beautiful and culture expressive and building something modernist.
Yeah. Because what is valuable for people, it will cling, it will stay, and if you build timeless also in the buildings in a timeless sense, it's not it's not a coincidence that uh, the the um, the most popular part of a city is the old towns. It's the
Yes.
beauty. Yeah, they are so beautiful, and because it's very very important because before we were making building cities and so forth, then were living in huts maybe and in nature and so forth. And
Mm,
then we have this chaotic order, that
mm.
nature is. But the more the civilization develops, it's become more and more necessary to have a beauty around you, as the old Greeks,
Mm.
they they knew what beauty was and what it did for the soul and for human beings. Um,
Yes.
it's so important.
Everything has been so self-evident for thousands of years. Then suddenly came this idea, this modernistic idea, and the world turned ugly. And all the people that were in charge, they pretend that it doesn't matter. But of course it matters. We knew that it mattered for thousands of years. That's why we built beautiful and strive for beauty. Now suddenly we don't. And we are surprised, that of course every society will have ills, but that we have increased the effect of the ills rather than reduced them. Architecture has the power both to increase the ills or reduce the ills. Yes, belonging, social atomization, everything, with good architecture, you can't solve all these problems, but you can definitely make them less severe. That's the power of architecture.
Yeah. So um, when you're planning a project and your vision of how a building should be and a city,
Mm.
the structure of the city and so forth, can you tell us a little about how, in a concrete sense, how it's structured? With the church maybe in the middle, and
Yeah, you have the classical hierarchy. When it's city planning, it's very important to keep the classical hierarchy, and that we are destroying now in many Swedish cities, but many cities all over the world. The classical hierarchy is basically that the only buildings that are above, are taller, are religious building and public buildings. That means that shows what's important in society: the spiritual and the public. What you know how is that they try to build towers everywhere. Towers are both bad urbanism, but they also dilute this sense what is important in society. Is mammon the most important thing in society? I hopefully not. So in the classical order, you have that only these two buildings rise above, and the rest of the building have like an even building height of maximum 6, absolutely maximum 7 stories. You keep it to that because then people have a connection to the street. And you also can create a more fine meshed grid when you build like this. So a bit lower urbanism, gentle density, you could call it, that creates a very livable density and very good, for business as well. Um, when you plan architecture, you have this framework that I mentioned, and I often mention this framework. And if I would describe it very, very loosely, how you attack a project is basically how you divide the facade of a building. So you, in the classical sense, you very, very often, and you see this even in 1930s skyscrapers in New York, how they divide it in the same way. You do a three-part division. You have the base section, mid section, and the roof section. And they are all divided with line because that creates a very readability for our mind. The base section is taller. It's a bit taller so that you feel that the building is just an illusion, but the base level will be a bit taller than the other sections. And you do that because you want to give a sense that the building is stable. It will not fall upon us. This is, of course, just pure, aesthetics, but it's like a psychological effect on us that we feel that the building will not follow us. Then you divide the facade, where you put the windows on the facade. You order them in part symmetries. You don't have one symmetry of windows, you have symmetry pairs. So you have different symmetry pairs. So the visual effect of the classical building then will be one that you can instantly read. You understand the building. You don't need to think, where does the building begin? Where is the middle of it? Where does it end? Also, it feels stable. It will not fall on you. At the same time, you get gentle stimulation with these part symmetries, not one boring symmetry for the mind, but different symmetry pairs on the facade. And that's it. And then, out of a philosophical level, you strive for what is good and beautiful. And this is not relativistic terms. What is beautiful is a very biological term. We can instantly feel that something is beautiful or ugly. It's something, really that we have inherited as in part of our DNA. And you can go in. The research on this subject is very much, about fractals. That the same fractal patterns that we find in nature, we find in classical architecture, and that is a reason why we find it beautiful.
Yeah.
So readable, gentle, stimulating architecture, where the architects strive to make a building that was beautiful and culturally expressive. Yes, it was built in Sweden or Greece or Thailand. It's culture expressive. It both express the culture of people that live there and reinforce it. It make buildings that people want to associate with. So that's both city planning and architecture in a very, very simple manner, I would say. Then you can, of course, go in a much deeper sense. But I think for the general public, that's good enough.
Yeah,
What this type of architecture does is that it doesn't stress you because it's readable architecture that you understand. Everything that your mind can comprehend makes you relax. If you can't make sense of your built environment with all this, crazy modernism, then they get stressed. Because if you can't read it, it can be dangerous. Everything that is dangerous, of course, stresses us. That's why we stroll slowly through through classical areas because they make us feel safe, while we hurry and rush in modernist areas because they make us instinctively, not that you think that you're unsafe, but in our deeper minds, we feel unsafe in this environment, so therefore we rush.
yeah. So so you can see that it's there's too much potential when it's chaotic for the mind, when it's uncertainty. It's
Yes,
too much.
uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
we,
you
we
really
want
need to.
safety. We want safety. We are very, very structured to, standing on two legs. When we view the world, we're looking for either is this place safe or is it dangerous? Can there come a tiger around the corner? Everything that makes us feel readable and we can feel some sense of control makes us happy.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. What comes to my mind is, of course, it's this fractals. You can see everything is if something is true on one level, it's true on
Mm.
another level.
Yeah.
If it's true in a certain science, it's true in this the engagement with people in a way,
Mm.
if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
and then when you told us about how the buildings are structured in the traditional architecture, that
Mm.
the heavy part is below, and then
Mm.
eases up upwards.
Like a
So
pyramid, you
that's
can always say. It's an impression of a
exactly,
pyramid. Yeah.
yeah, and also the also that combining or connecting heaven and earth.
Mm.
Jonathan Pageau and his
Yeah.
talks much about that. It's the same pattern. The heavy things is down on earth, and the higher you go, the higher the truth. And then also you can see many of the houses, oftentimes because they drain the rains
Mm.
and so forth. It's a vertical line and points upwards. It's very. I
Mm.
think it's very interesting, and would you say it's kind of anthropomorphic in a sense? That it's replic. You can look at the building and also look at the human and see that it's somewhat.
Yes, it's very similar to the
Yeah,
human.
yeah,
We are three-part divided, if you think of it. Our legs is the base, is the longest, midsection, and the smallest section is, of course, our head. So yeah, it reflects in the human very much.
yeah, yeah. So interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. So I I think. I think that there is a lot more to dwell into for people in this, but as you said, the intuitive level is enough most of the
Yes,
time, and
and know that they're allowed to think this because I have to hate to say it. You need to know that you're allowed to think this because we are,
yeah,
as is shown, all this new talk about fascism is to make people think that I think forbidden thoughts almost.
yeah, and self censor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So But as you said, you have seen that it's very positive response from people, and
Mm.
this positivity have this streamed into the public eye, or is it that it's always try to erase what you're doing, or is it actually prompted in a more positive way than
Oh,
let's say in the beginning?
no, it's in the beginning they were more positive because they didn't believe it was a threat. Now they feel it's a threat, so now they're extra hostile, and therefore I will have extra many articles that I'm a fascist. Uh, so the public loves this, but most big city journalists hate it. If you have it in, the biggest newspaper in the south, in Scania, in Gothenburg, and in Stockholm, they all hate it
Okay.
because it's against their progressive mindset. Because they believe somehow that building beautiful for everyone is not progressive; that it's reactionary. It's very, twisted, this mindset. So they have made us enemies when we are not enemies. Because in one sense, this is not a political movement. Everyone can find something in the classical tradition. What you want is to create beautiful built environments for everyone and not only the rich. But as they see it as a reactionary movement, they are against it without thinking, especially since they all live in classical neighborhoods. Every culture journalist that writes bad about the Architecture Uprising, they all live without exception in classical neighborhoods, in classical buildings. But they never reflect about this.
Have you pointed this out to
Oh, yes, many times.
many times? Yeah, that's good.
And what do they say?
Yeah.
They don't know. No, it's just a coincidence. Yes, it's cognitive dissonance. Of course, it's
Yeah,
cognitive dissonance.
of course, of course. As many things is when you also when you give I know I I turn it into like a economic situation, but many times it's also that because people say and do things because their pockets are filled with the greens, with the
Mm.
money. So that's creating this cognitive dissonance. And yeah, if what's feeding you is giving you money for say this and think this, then okay, let's go with it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's yeah, and it's also as you said, that in the beginning they were more positive because they didn't see it as a threat, but as you prolonged and have succeeded
Mm.
and showing people that this is of great value, then it's conquering with their world view. Then
Yes.
they get they shaking and then want to censor even more. And this is what you can see also in yeah, you can see it with in
Everything.
2020 with the
Everything.
COVID and yeah, immigration,
Yes.
all these things. So hopefully, it maybe that it's when they're shaking, it's you can tell that it's crumbling down this old
Hopefully, but we
thought.
problem is that our elites are very well entrenched. We need to replace them. Really, we really need to replace them in academia, in newspapers, everywhere, with people that love the place where they live, that are more loyal to the nation where they live than other elites in other countries. Um, so yeah, we need that, but they are very well entrenched, and you will have to do very radical things, and we are not there yet in Europe. We need to do it, but we are definitely not there yet.
That's and that's why meta politics is so important,
Mm.
and the showing that you know values is on a pinnacle. It's very important for people to change their mind as well.
Yeah,
Be realize what is value and is not valued, and what is meaningful in life,
yeah.
and that springs downwards in you know downwards to you from the parents to the child and so forth. And as you said, it's long way there, and because there is so much that has to be changed
Oh,
in
yes, yes. But
and
as soon as it
academia.
is, things will go very fast. With this current government we have in Sweden, if they get re-elected, they will create an institute for classical architecture, new classical architecture, and classical art. So then we will start educating new classical architects and classical artists. Okay, when it comes to art, there are two private classical art schools. Um, so there is still something created, but it will become more mainstream if it's the government that has created it. So if they win, things will change quite fast, because then you will get, after a few years, every year you get new cohorts of new classical architects, and they will spread out in the system. They will work at the municipalities, they will work as city architects, and they will create their own architecture firms. So you will see a very, very quick revolution in our built environment. Unfortunately, it's very, very even between the opposition and this government. So yeah, we can have hopes, but if that happens, that they get re-elected, this government, then change will come quite quickly.
Oh, that's yeah, that's hopeful in many ways, and would be a great victory for your activism as well.
Yeah.
And it's. I was reading book 8 of Plato's Republic, and
Mm.
he used this Socrates used this image of two scales.
Mm.
When wealth rises, virtue and
Mm.
integrity falls. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we see in our time, especially in architecture and city planning. We
Yeah.
replace craftsmanship, beauty, and human proportion with profit and speed and efficiency. So
It's
buildings are
I
not.
wouldn't say I would say it's not about profit and efficiency. It's
No, of
ideology.
course, yeah, yeah,
It's
as
ideology.
you
So
said.
all this ugliness is made out of ideology, because the developers have always been profit maximizing.
Yeah,
100 years ago, when they built all these amazing towns, they were as greedy as they are today. They haven't changed. What changed is society around them. So if we focus on greed, that it's greed that is the problem, then the architects get away. Then they try to blame that it's not our fault, but it is their fault, because they are the ones in charge of how the built environment is created,
yeah.
and
I'm
they
glad you
want to
said
create
that.
ugliness.
I'm glad you pointed that down and hammered it out a third time, because
Mm.
you see, in my mind, that is the
Because it sounds logical.
exactly. But
Mm.
it's very good that you hammered it out, because this was the third time I was trying to say that it was profit at this, but that's very important to
Because
me.
it must be rational. Why is the modern world ugly? We can't believe that people do this on purpose. So there must be some rational explanation. Oh, it must be costs or greed. But there is no rational explanation.
No.
And that's what I'm trying to tell everyone. The only rationale is that they have an ideology where they want to create ugliness.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it becomes a downward spiral with developers. Because if you say that beauty is relative, then developers can build any shit and just say that the taste is in the eye of the beholder. And that's what they do. So this relativism fits the developers like a hand in a glove. It's perfect for them. But if you say that beauty is not relative, then we will not approve ugly projects. Then we'll say, go back to the drawing board. We will not allow you this to be built.
Mm. Yeah. And that's the same that you can see what some big companies that is in cahoots with politicians and so forth. People get very confused about why are they doing it? Is it profit? But you can see many companies and politicians do it without profit, even lower their own profit for the sake of, we don't know why, but when it comes to brass tacks, it's almost for evil's sake, you know. It's
It is for evil's sake. It is
yeah.
for the ideological sake. And I would say because they know that people hate it, I would tell that they are evil now. I would go so far because if you know that people hate what you do and you still impose it on them, what is that?
Mm.
Because they know that people dislike modernism, but they feel
Yeah.
that they should have the right to impose it on others. That is fascist, by the way, if you want to impose something on people that don't want it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. They know what they are doing and they do it despite.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and yeah, it's as we talked about it. It's the same way on every level and in this political environment that the whole world is in, especially in the West.
mm,
And so I'm quite interesting in you said that they are prompting up this classical architecture worldwide now. So
mm.
in what countries did you say? Is it also in like more foreign countries like Japan and so forth? Or-
Uh, well, it is all over Europe, Latin America, North America, and it's spreading a little bit to the Middle East. There is in India, there is in China. Japan, we don't know yet. I know that there are Japanese people, but mostly actually in Asia, it's mostly Filipinos that are very into this movement. Um, we lack proper connection with Japan. There is always a problem with language and language
Yeah,
barriers.
of course.
So we lack connection, but there are traditional Japanese firms, but we don't have a representative. There's been no uprising created there. Not that they probably not want one, but the movement haven't succeeded in penetrating this language space
Okay.
yet. It's easier with Chinese because there's a larger Chinese diaspora that are affected. So the head of the Canadian Architecture Uprising is of Chinese descent. He's a second generation Chinese immigrant. There are people in Taiwan that want to bring this. And Taiwan has very much Japanese architecture, traditional architecture, and they want to bring it there. So that's the problem with, some countries.
Yeah.
In Brazil, there's a very lively movement now. They even have a summer school in traditional architecture. So it spreads everywhere, a bit uneven. It depends on critical persons. Most people do this on their no, all people do this on their spare time. No one works with this, earn a living from this. So yeah, it's spreading and it has taken root differently in different countries, but it is everywhere and it's unstoppable because it's intuitive and it's very popular.
And it's aligned with truth.
Yeah. So biggest progress in movement in terms of actual things done, then Germany, France, Netherlands, and the UK, and the US, of course.
Yeah.
But the US is a bit uneven. The US, they build amazing new classical projects, but with very bad urban contexts. American urbanism is a disaster that is hard to fix mostly out of political reasons, I would say. But they build amazing new traditional architecture in the US. Um, in Europe, they build very good. The how things change is very different in different countries, but there is more and more organization in every country. There are summer schools, there are conferences, and people are connected now. That's a very big important. The last 10 years, the amount of connections between over the borders have exploded. So people are more and more aware of what's happening in the neighboring country, despite the language barriers. So that's an amazing, change, and I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah.
I don't need, I can attend a conference every month if I would like to, but I have spare time, and I'm not the one that should be invited to the conferences. I do things in the background. I want, the architects and the public to meet each other much more.
Yeah.
And for young to, and it's especially important for all the young people know that you can become a classical architect.
Yeah. And I think you're doing a really good job, and uh, that's one thing why I just want to have you on the podcast, because
Mm.
I saw that so passionate, and I really love to see that when you're passionate for something that is really truly good and with good intention, and not just doing things for oneself, but that you see something is good and you want to
Yeah.
promote it, and you're doing it with passion. So
Yes.
I think,
And the most important thing that you see that it's true what I do or good that I do is that I've not gotten rich from what I do. I'm still
exactly,
as
exactly,
poor as early.
quite the contrary,
Yeah,
quite the
because
contrary,
one must
right?
understand that so many of these organizations that fight for a cause, they are employment agencies for certain people, and they don't want to solve the problem, because if they solve the problem they were tasked for, then they would lose their nice position. So I'm half Jewish, so I can say these things. Many of the organizations fighting anti-Semitism, they don't want to solve the problem. They want to every year to be highlights anti-Semitism is increasing by 5,000%, because then they can get more government funding, have nicer jobs, go on more lectures, and nice cushy interviews, and etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it becomes an industry, and it's like all, I think aid is the same thing. It's a employment agency rather than trying to solve problems in most countries.
Do you feel that you're a little more safe because of your Jewish heritage, and not be like pointed or aiming at that much, or it doesn't matter?
Yes, super much. You can always hide behind it. I have so many
Okay.
I have so many credentials, so it if they knew them, it would be very hard for them to attack me. So I can always draw
Mm.
this race card. I have Jewish heritage, and even
Yeah.
worse, in contemporary politics and contemporary discussions.
Yeah.
My mother was born in a refugee camp. Oh my God.
Oh,
So
yeah. Then
that's
you're quite. Yeah.
victimhood points.
Yeah.
I
I.
have genuine working class background. My grandfather was a wielder, and my other grandfather was a hospital, what you call it, not manager, definitely not manager. It's not janitor. What do you call it? The Swedish word is vaktmästare.
Janitor.
Is it
Janitor. Yeah. Yeah. The janitor. I think it is.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
one that is in charge of fixing things at the hospital,
Yeah.
like some
Exactly.
kind of hospital mechanic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very genuine working class. My grandfathers on my mother's side, they were socialists.
Mm.
Yes. And my mother came to Sweden to begin with because she wanted to see democratic socialism with her own eyes.
Mhm.
Sweden had a certain reputation in the 1970s. It was rich democratic socialism. There were gold on the streets and no poor people. So that was, very interesting for people that were interested into
Yeah.
socialism. So my credentials, they are like, ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
untouchable.
I
it,
may
it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way, but
no,
yeah, but
but
that's relatively
why not to use
victimhood
it?
words.
Yeah, but you can use it for a good cause, and
Yeah.
so yeah. Actually, I might not be on my father's side.
Mm.
His mother might have been Jewish. He thinks so, but unfortunately, it's not on the mother's side, so I can't use that.
Oh, poor you!
Yeah,
You can't
have to be on the
victimhood
father's side.
words. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's
exactly.
that's how bad debate have become. That you need victimhood points.
Yeah,
We don't discuss things about merits. It's because this identity politics have poisoned everything. So everyone needs to be a victim in order to take something. If you're a white heterosexual male, then you're an oppressor, and everything you say is evil. That's how shitty a lot of debate has become.
yeah,
So that's why I need to use, because unfortunately the ones opposing traditional architecture are always leftist and progressive people.
mm,
So then if you discuss with them, you need victim points.
yeah,
You need to have
and
disabilities, you need to have victim points, because otherwise you're oppressing fascist by
yeah,
default.
and but also when you when you have this climate that
Mm.
you can take victimhood as a almost as a virtue.
Mm.
It also waters down what's beneath it in reality, uh, the things that have been and have been, you know, um,
Yo, people don't strive to
yeah,
be good or true. They strive to be victims.
yeah,
That's a
exactly. And
shit, every, classical philosopher, Aristotle, they would, they would turn around in their graves. They would spin around in the graves if they see, the 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 modern virtues, the modern virtue of victimhood. Oh, I'm disabled. Oh, I'm incapable. Oh, therefore I am, higher in the social hierarchy. That's crazy if you think of it, and it's very
yeah,
destructive for society as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's a very strange form of morals, to take a low part of yourself and try to put it on
And that
on
pedestal,
pedestal.
yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's very crazy. And it also waters down um, waters down the crucial parts of those labels, where they come from, if you know what I
Mm.
mean. That
Yeah,
it takes away the at a certain point, people won't even take anything in consideration, if you know what I mean.
mm.
That um, yeah, in a historical sense, what happened and so forth. But then again, we have to be objective, and life is life, and people are people, and there are clashes, and there are, yeah, victories, and there are destructions of cities and peoples, and it's we have to learn from our faults, rather than increasing, like increasing. It's almost, it's become like this. Even that you can't even be in the same room as certain people, guilt by association and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's become very, very confusing for people if they're not um,
You're not
alert.
striving for virtue, you're striving for victimhood. And, America is first with everything, but it was very amusing to see all these people on Twitter when it was Twitter. Now the craziest people have left Twitter, but they in their bios, they were always survivor of something. It was like an
Mm.
endless charade of how much they were victims. And it's like, why do you put the worst of you on your sleeves and are proud of it? Yeah,
Yeah,
an amusing
it's
period, a crazy period, and an amusing period at the same time.
yeah, and you can learn a lot from it as well, how
Mm.
people work.
Yes,
The,
they can do anything.
uh,
We can do anything. We can, with right manipulation, we can do exactly everything. We can kill babies or we can cure cancer.
yeah.
Everything is just, you can almost get a bit nihilistic just by, manipulating the masses.
Mm. Yeah,
I'm of course
absolutely.
a part of this mass. I'm not above this mass, but just in other fields. I may be aware in some fields, but not in other fields, and I get duped and manipulated.
Yeah, of course, and that's a part of being human being. That we can't do everything. That's why we need to have the right man at the right place. and
Yes.
and yeah, it comes down to hierarchy again there.
Mm.
And so I'm very interested in how did you start, to engage in this activism of, and wanted to, yeah, you saw the value in the classical architecture and so forth. It has to be started somewhere.
Yeah, I think it started in a way. It started the same way as with most people. You just saw, you went to the city center. You saw that every old building was beautiful. I didn't have the vocabulary then. Every old building was beautiful, and every new building was ugly. Despite that we were poor back then, and now we were very rich. So it's like, whoa, how does this work? And then, trying to learn more about, is there anywhere on the world where they build classical? And you found internet, and then you started discovering classical projects, and then you see, oh, it's fully possible. And then just you have to do advocacy, and when you do advocacy, you cannot say we should and write a text that we should build beautiful. You have to show real examples. So it has been a learning curve as well, how learn how to engage the public. How do you
Yeah.
post so you engage the public? And from there it is. Simple as very many other people, this is wrong. What is wrong? I had help from my studies. I studied a lot of sociology at university. So I learned to know how our thoughts are created, discourse analysis, how our thoughts are created. And then I made a discourse analysis about architecture. And I realized, where the fault lies. It's with the architects because they create the discourse. The discourse is, you could say, where the frame of our conversation that is the discourse. So when I say contemporary architecture, everyone, you and me included, get a picture in our head. What is contemporary architecture? Where they just say the word, and who have created what we see, our thought of what contemporary architecture is, that is, of course, the architects. They have done this through promoting this architecture in their media, in their education, etc., etc. So they create the thoughts of what is architecture. Therefore, they are guilty. That's why they are the ones responsible for the ugliness of the contemporary world. And then you deep dive in it and you try to find out why are they doing this? What are the parameters of this discourse? What are you allowed and not allowed to do and say? And then you learn more and more and more afterward. So this my educational background helped, and then chance. I was the one.
Yeah.
There are many people that have done similar things, and I just had the luck that mine, of all the seeds that were planted, this one grew.
Yeah, it's all. I think it's always fascinating to see, as you say, as you know, it's really is this a seed that is
Mm.
growing, because it's not that you're when you're engaging in something, then you just it clicks and then you do it all the way. But it's a process. It's a process, and then you see what you're good at, and then
Mm.
you see what you are concerned about, and then you can combine these things, and then you can make something really good of it. It's so
Mhm.
interesting.
Yes.
So I have a little more personal question.
Yes.
If you, uh,
Oh, feel free.
yeah, are you religious? I think because religion is contains full of beauty and so forth.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. Religious, yes and no. I believe in God,
yeah.
and I consider myself Lutheran.
Mm, okay.
But with that said, at the moment, I've lived before more religiously, that I, attended more Sunday service every week and attended religious festivals. Now I am at the moment I do less so, which is a bit unhappy. Um, but in that sense, yes, I believe in God, and I believe that we can't live without God. God can live without us, but we can't live without Him. Society will falter without a belief in the transcendental. That's also what you see in the Western world, because what secularists believe, that as soon as we get rid of religion, we will become very rational people. The opposite.
Yeah.
Religion is what saved us from irrationality and chaos. So the only thing that happened is that we changed a good God to worse gods. So we now believe in climate change religion. That's the biggest religion that we have at the moment. It has all, it has all it's not about climate change is real or not. It's about how it's expressed. It's expressed in a religious way with
Yes.
religious language. It's a doomsday cult. And you have to, compensate. You compensate for your climate. You have to feel angst for the climate. It's very much, you try to compensate for your sins, and the end of the world is near. We have to take action now. It's so religious. It is really a
Yeah.
religious revival movement.
And
So, so we
it's
changed a good God to a worse God. So that's what happened.
yeah, and this is not something new. You're Christian, so you know it. You read Old Testament. What we can see today with the environment activism and ideology is or religion is goddess worship,
Yeah.
worshiping the earth. but
Yes.
people are
But it's a
so
doomsday cult because
yeah,
people, it doesn't produce anything. It just produces angst. And people also generally believe that the earth is better without humans. So we
yeah,
should die.
yeah. It's very hostile to human, and
Yes.
it's also this climate activism and religion is it's exactly what you can see in the Old Testament. It's human sacrifice, but
Yes.
with a little sugar on it, and you
Mm.
named it abortion for the woman's sake. And
Yes.
yeah, free of choice, but no responsibility at all.
Yeah.
So
So,
it's
so, so was it rational? Was it rational? Did it become more rational now when majority of Swedes have left religion or majority of Europeans? No, it become more irrational.
yeah,
The old world was more sane.
mm.
There was something called
It's
men and women. Now everything is gender fluid. But it's like every 10 years there's a new fad or fashion that, so the religious world created stability and mental saneness. It protected us.
and then you
Now,
have to question why that is.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, it became everything became worse. So and also we don't reproduce anymore.
no,
We're literally, you see that demographic wise, we're on the edge of a cliff now. We will have, we already had negative population growth in most of Europe for the last 30, 40 years, but it's an accelerating trend that we hid with immigration in Western Europe.
yeah,
But as you see it now, you got until 2050, 60, that is not that far from now, 2, 3 decades, you're going to see many countries lose maybe a third of their population, and the average age will increase drastically. So that's what life without religion has created, because religion, all the successful religions, they emphasize family formation and kids.
yeah.
If family formation and kids just become a lifestyle choice, of course, kids are, they take a lot of time. If you don't get any social credit for it, then less people will do it. Families will definitely be smaller, and then we become extinct. I don't think that humanity will become extinct because there are so many religious revival groups all over the world, and they have very positive fertility rates. So strange to say, we probably have also reached peak secularism in the developed world, and we'll see a gradual religious revival in the developed world, not because more people are converting to Christianity, just because the Christians are the only ones having kids. You already see this within Judaism. Uh, Islam is in an earlier stage. They are in the crashing stage now before they have their revival. So for what you have seen, I know a country like Turkey has lower fertility rate than Sweden. That's
Really?
kind of dramatic. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a very dramatic shift in the last 10 years. That happened in countries like Turkey, Iran, Tunisia, an Arab country, has
But
almost
they
identical fertility than Sweden. But of
and
course, they
there's
are in a much earlier stage, so they still have a population momentum. But yeah, but the point still is, if kids are just a lifestyle choice that it becomes with secularism, we will die out as a species.
yeah, and yeah, it's it's yeah, very true there. Yeah, they are in the earlier stage, and also that we will die out as a species if we don't reproduce. And as you also said, the traditional values is what prompting childbirth as well, to
Yeah.
having and not just putting happiness as the highest, because it's really not for a child maybe, but not
Mm.
for an adult. Uh, you can
As
see
an
this
adult, you
argument.
can get social status. What religion does is that gives you social status for having a family. And most people, including myself, are very happy if we get social status from something. So if you get social status for having many kids, then more people will have it.
Yeah,
then
almost.
the sacrifices are worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and of course, if starting a family, of course, it will have some suffering, but it's also that suffering is what creates meaning in life as well. So you can't,
Yes, very
yeah.
much.
So it's so infantile mindset of the secular world. It's
It's extremely infantile. It's just, short-sighted here and now, my own pleasure. So what you get is long-term happiness. You get happiness, stability, because things are meaningful. It's much more meaningful to do something for your child than do it for yourself. So life becomes meaningless and gradually empty. Of course, as long as you're young, you can have an active life, but the older you get, you will only be alone and isolated.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, but also, caring for others create a very different society from one society that where you only put your own interests above everything else. So society will be less nice with this secularism. But as I said, okay, it's very different development in many different countries, but you see a religious revival through demography, not through conversions, but through demography in some places in Europe, definitely in the US.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, you can also see that one thing. Many say that Islam is some say that is growing, and some say that it's declining. But actually, if they come to the secular world, they are more free of choice. So the fact is that you can see that many are deconverting from Islam when they come to this secular world, and many of the converts are it's their children that is they are born into the religion, but then when they grow older.
Islam has a thing uh, that it gives its people that follow Islam, it gives them a certain pride. The only achievement you need is to be Muslim. Then you have achieved something. Then you are, have a high social status according to the religion. So if you're a total failure and live in the suburbs and you haven't achieved anything, being Muslim is something that everyone can be, and you can attain social status from it. So it doesn't matter if you're economic failure and everything else is failure. Just by being Muslim gives you a certain status points. So in that sense, Islam can be attractive for second generation. But we have created this very destructive device that no one is immune to, and it's called a cell phone. So everyone is glued to their screens, and then then you can ask questions that you can't ask openly in Islamic societies, and then things happen. Then things fall apart very much. And that's why what you see, the effects, as I mentioned, the fertility rate in Turkey now, that is 1.34 kids per woman. It's heading now in 2025. That's a direct result of people having access to information and questioning the foundations of Islam, or even if it's a moral religion at all. So they are just in a earlier stage, but everyone will be affected, and then there will be a religious revival in those countries as well. How things proceed out is a bit different in the Islamic world than many other societies, because Islam is a much stricter society that doesn't tolerate questioning. But thanks to the cell phone, things can be done online secretly.
Yeah, exactly, with not investing your life in just asking a question.
Yeah, because you risk your life
Yeah.
by
Many,
asking the
many
question.
times so, yes, many
Yeah,
times so, yeah.
there are many more Muslim atheists than we know of, because for them there is no advantage of declaring that you're an atheist. It just puts you in danger. It puts you in real danger, because the punishment of apostasy in Islam is death.
Yes. So
And they have enough young age profile in the Muslim world to have people that will kill you or try to kill you.
yeah. So that's a that's a great it's a great tool actually for people to realize what they are born into. And of course, there are many different form of Islamic sects. You know, you have the Sunni and Shia, and then you have the Sufist, more esoteric.
Yeah, there are Ahmadiyya, there are many, there exactly. Maybe not as many as a Protestant sects, but still, there are quite many forms.
Yeah.
But in the end, you know, they have the Quran as their, you know, just as Christianity has the Bible. But they are not immune to demographic collapse that everyone else experience. It's different in different countries. The most advanced demographic collapse are Iran and Turkey and Tunisia, but
Yeah, and
others
that's
are following.
and that's also in the paste that it becomes secularized, secularized. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, and let's see here the time. Yeah, we're almost up to 2 hours here, and I think it's a great point to stop. And it's have been a very interesting conversation, and I'm really glad that you joined me for this episode. And I want to ask you, where can people find you and see your content, and most importantly, how can they self get engaged with this uh, uh, activism of classical architecture and so forth?
I do different things on different social media platforms, but if you want to see projects, then I publish them on X and on Facebook. In X, under my own name, Michael Diamant. On Facebook, in New Tradition Architecture. And it also pops out on the Architecture Uprising. So there you can follow me. On Instagram, I post different things, more what I do, like this kind of podcasts. And Reddit, I also post projects. So one can just follow any of these, follow an uprising movement or following New Tradition Architecture, and there one can follow, and one can reach out to other people that are engaged in the movement, or one can reach out to me and ask, how can you contribute? Most important thing that you contribute is just being aware that we can build beautiful today. That awareness is the most important thing. And then, of course, you talk to everyone else that it's possible to be beautiful today. So this awareness and you know, it's very easy activism, slacktivism. Click and like, share, and just being aware. If you want to do more on that, and there's endless of work to be done, reach out to either an uprising chapter in your country or reach out to me, and I will guide you and tell what there is that needed to be done. Many people are engaged in this movement, hundreds of people, but we need hundreds of more to engage in this, because this is a volunteer based. We do things in our spare time. No one gets paid for doing this. We do it because it's a purposeful and we love it.
Yeah, that's great, and that's also it's information where they can get engaged, but also a message of how important it is to invest your time, your free time, in something valuable. You know, that really creates circling on the water, so to say. Have been really great, Michael, and I will put every information in the description of this episode on YouTube and Spotify and so forth. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too. Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
So that's the end of episode 9. I hope you enjoyed it and also got some new insights. So if you are interested to hear more about this, and maybe you want to hear more from Michael Diamant, you can check many media outlets, articles in quite big newspaper, and so forth, have written about him, and there's much of his speech and also debates on YouTube. He's also doing some interviews on Riks, which is, I think, Sweden Democrats media outlet and so forth. So just search his name and it will come up. Either way, I will also put all his information in the description of this video and this episode. So next time, for next episode, episode 10, I'm not really sure who I will bring on, but there are some guys that may jump on for a 10th episode. And I'm not really sure who it will be, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, I will produce some more YouTube videos if I don't get the episode done in a near future. So, as I said, stay tuned and don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and also check out my Instagram account, Mattias Lidborn. So, yeah, as I said, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm for the channel. And also, if you need coaching, head over to my website, mattiaslidborn.com, for more information. Click on services and you can see what my services are there. There are training programs, diet plans, and talk sessions with coaching. So check that out, and thank you very much for tuning in today, and have a nice day. Bye.